Good afternoon, my friends. This is Paul, and welcome to my 6th annual Best Games of the Year list, where we'll be looking at the top 10 best Switch games that released in 2023. I was so happy with the performance of last year's video that I kid you not, I have spent an entire year working on this video in some capacity to try to see if we can make it more grand, more majestic, more celebratory, and also double down on the Paul humor to make it the type of thing that only I would make. Most YouTubers like to thank their supporters and helpers at the end of their videos, but I'd like to do it right now so that as you're watching the video you can appreciate the effort that my friends put into the video so that you can say, oh wow, these guys are great, and then go and follow them if you like what they have to do. So I'd like to thank Matt for doing a little bit of sound editing as well as composing a custom music track for the Game of the Year, Splat Cat for contributing footage and some of her thoughts on the Game of the Year, and last but certainly not least, Esabelle. She is going to be doing some visual and audio editing as well as a little bit of a live action skit. At one point she also recorded some voice work and she's helping out with some of the transitions. So please go and follow them if you can. I don't know what Matt's is, but the links to Cat's streaming service and Esabelle's YouTube channel will be in the description. Before we get too into it, I want to make a few things clear. This list will only contain full games. DLC and an update will be in my best memories video, so you can stay tuned for that. In addition, I also wanted to talk about more spoilers, because in the previous videos I would reserve the spoilers for the Game of the Year or the top 2 games of the year. So just in case you still want to go into these games fresh, I'm going to implement
a skip button. Well, yes. Yes, I think we can do that. Maybe letting you skip ahead for just a moment. Surely it couldn't hurt. Yes, a skip button we shall have. Go ahead and give it a shot. I'll pop you forward in time so that the second my incessant droning starts to bore you, with just the push of a button, you'll have zipped right past it. No more listening to me rambling on and on and on. No. Well, don't sit around waiting for me to shut up. Go ahead and make me shut up. That's the power of the button. The minute I start to go off on a thoughtless display of self-absorption, it's right at your fingertips to go poof, and it's all over. I can't wait to see what Cookie 9 will say about this.
So if you're averse to spoilers, just look at the timestamp on the screen and then you can go right to the next game. I don't normally like doing honorable mentions in top 10 lists because I feel like it artificially increases the length of the list. But because the developer specifically reached out to me and hoped that this would be on the list, and because this game is very, very Catholic, I figured I'm just going to talk about it anyway. So before we get into the Big Ten, let's get into the honorable mention. Sainthood is described as a roguelike strategy adventure game where you get to build your own little Catholic community. You can build a church, you can build a village, you can help people solve their problems, and you can even get bios of the various saints. This game isn't out yet, but the gameplay that you're seeing is based on the free demo on Steam. It feels like it's very faithful and very reverent to Catholicism, which is typically something that you can't say about Christian video games. From what I've heard, the music is Gregorian chants. Unfortunately, I had to find some stock copyright-free music because obviously the game isn't out yet. But from what I heard in the trailer, it sounds very nice. Now, this is not sponsored. I was not paid to talk about this. I just got a tweet from the developer saying, I hope this makes the list. I don't actually know how to pronounce the developer's name, and I don't want to embarrass him by mispronouncing it, so here's his name on the screen. I hope if you have a Steam account, you'll go ahead and check out the demo. There's also a 1 minute long trailer on YouTube, but for the sake of pacing this video, I will just say that it exists. Hopefully I'll put a link in the description, and now let's get on to the actual top 10.
Keep the momentum! Emblem of the blue blur!
Sonic Superstars. This is a 2D platformer with an emphasis on momentum. You don't necessarily want to go fast, you just want to make sure that your characters don't slow down too much and use the slopes and the environment to your advantage by knowing when is it time to rev, when is it time to curl up in a ball to increase the speed. Each level has some kind of gimmick to make sure that it stands out from just any other 2D platformer, such as running up the walls in Bridge Island Zone, or grinding on vines and swinging off of them in Speed Jungle. The controls are absolutely perfect. They feel pretty much exactly like they did in Sonic Mania, which was the best controlling Sonic game to date. A lot of the old tricks that I used in that game in Sonic 3 and Knuckles still worked here, and the game was overall a lot of fun to see what kind of new ideas they could throw into the levels to make it even more interesting. And generally speaking, I had more fun than frustration all the way through. The reason why it's so low on the list is because it has a myriad of problems that prevent it from truly reaching its full potential. While there are unique powers that the characters can get with each Chaos Emerald, it's kind of clunky to actually select them, and I just had more fun sticking to the one-button approach of the traditional Sonic games. While you can collect medals, you can only use them to buy cosmetics for a robot that you use in a side mode, as opposed to it having a major effect on the game, although there is a neat twist later on when we get to the spoiler sections. And I also feel like it's priced at $60, but yet it looks like more like a $30 Wii game. Despite all of my nitpicks, Sonic Superstars is fun, even if it's not mind-blowingly amazing. Now let's move on to the spoilers in 3, 2, 1. My favorite zone is Cyber Station. It's only one act long, but I personally am in the camp that I think that's good, because it means that the team could focus on quality over we have to have every 2 acts, even if the second act is somehow inferior. The graphic style changes to that of more of a pixelated 3D approach. You grind along on wires, you see like pixelated enemies. I had the sound turned off during this point, so I don't know if perhaps the sound effects have changed to be more 8-bit, but I think that would be a cool touch if that were the case. I really liked how there were a lot of transformations in this level, such as turning into an octopus or a rocket. The only part of the level I didn't like was when you were a mouse and tried to climb up the wires and find the optimal path to get to the top. Every time you get hit by a cat, you lose all of your rings and have to start your progress on the maze all over again. In addition, since you can't change the camera, you're not able to see where there are spikes at the top that won't lead you to the exit. Apart from that, it's a masterpiece. You also get a chance to fight against the custom bot that you've used your medals on as the boss, which is neat. I still wish the medals had been used for something better, but it's at least something if you're not into the battle mode.
Connect us! Fire Emblem!
Fire Emblem Engage. This is the latest turn-based strategy game from Intelligent Systems, the same company behind Advance Wars and Paper Mario. I am a huge fan of Fire Emblem. I've actually played every single version of every game that's ever been released in North America, even the spin-offs like Tokyo Mirage Sessions and Fire Emblem Warriors. So I was so hyped for Fire Emblem Engage that not only did I outright buy it, not just rent it, but I bought all of the DLC as well. And it didn't quite live up to my lofty expectations, as I still consider it the third worst Fire Emblem game that I've played, but looking at it from a sheer tactical RPG perspective, it hands down has the best gameplay in the series. I like how they took a page from Mario + Rabbids Sparks of Hope and let you freely move around in an enclosed space instead of just moving the arrow to make the unit go to the right space. You just freely move around, select the enemy you want to attack, and then the attack animations are really smooth. The UI has been improved so that pretty much all of the information you need to know is right there. It'll tell you this attack will down the enemy will give this much damage after this attack. It's much more streamlined and much easier to follow along, while at the same time also bumping up the difficulty so that it's not too easy. The signature feature that makes Fire Emblem Engage stand out is the engage mechanic. I guess it's kind of like Personas, where you wear a ring, engage, and then one of the heroes from a past Fire Emblem game will support you. Sometimes they give you passive abilities, but other times you can literally fuse with that Fire Emblem hero to take on his or her appearance. You can use some of his or her weapons and even skills from that character's game. So for example, you might have more powerful magic with Celica, but it'll drain 1 health every time you use it. But your super special move is being able to warp really far away on the battlefield and then do a massive Ragnarok explosion. It's super cool to see all of these heroes united together in one game with all of their voice actors from Fire Emblem heroes reprising their roles, and it also leads to some really cool paralogue chapters where you get to replay iconic moments from Fire Emblem history along with the super cool remix of that particular game's music. Engage also features some really good production values. The graphics are by far the best we've seen in the series, making Fire Emblem Three Houses look like an outdated, last generation mess. The environment feels like an actual real place, not only because it's more accurate when you actually zoom in and you can knock down fences when you're doing an attack, or the characters will be on higher elevation, but after the battle you can freely explore around in 3D, which is especially cool in the paralogs because you can be like, wow, this game has never looked better. The Somniel, where you spend your free time, is also a really fun place to explore, even if it's not that great from a Fire Emblem standpoint. The story is pretty lackluster. It has its moments, but most Fire Emblem games have done it significantly better. I also wish that the characters were more fleshed out, as most of them are pretty boring and just have 1 or 2 generic personality traits. However, if you look past the fact that it's not as grand and epic as most Fire Emblem games, and simply look at it as a fun strategy RPG with lots of cool nods to the franchise's history, then Fire Emblem Gage is still a worthy pickup, even if I wish you could just pick up the other Fire Emblem games instead. But as far as a moment that blew my mind, we'll see that in the spoiler section in 3, 2, 1. I'm not really sure how to adequately explain it, and I've seen some YouTubers try to say that this moment was stupid, but I can't help how I feel. I was filled with so much joy when Alear became an emblem and her hair turned a straight up blue to reflect that she was now more of the divine dragon than the fell dragon, and it sort of connected her to the other Fire Emblem heroes by saying we all love Fire Emblem, and even if some games are better than others, we're going to treat them equally. This was especially apparent in the final battle when Alear summons all of the emblems, including herself, all at once, and they stand shoulder to shoulder. Once you see the cutscene for yourself, you'll be able to see the inspiration for this entire video's gimmick. It was a lot of fun to come up with unique summonings for each game, and I hope that if this game does well, then Intelligent Systems can summon the Japanese exclusive Fire Emblem games and let us Americans experience them.
Shine on, Emblem of Beginning! March! Care for us, Emblem of Echoes! Celica! Provide for us, Emblem of the Holy War! Sigurd! Free us, Emblem of Genealogy! Blink! Rise up, Emblem of Binding! Roy! Sweep across, Emblem of Blazing! Lyn! Restore calm, Emblem of the Sacred! Erica! Fight on, Emblem of Radiance! Ike! Heal us, Emblem of Dawn! Micaiah! Reignite us, Emblem of Awakening! Lucina! Bear your fangs, Emblem of Fate! Corin! Teach us, Emblem of the Academy! Violet! And of course, the final emblem. Connect us! Fire Emblem!
What?
We 13 emblems stand against you with our allies. The future may divide us once more. But here and now, we fight with one heart. This fight, this moment in time, is all that matters. Avert our fate, Emblem of Spirits.
Ghost Trick Phantom Detective. I'm not really sure how to describe this game. You play as a spirit who doesn't have a physical body, so in order to progress through the environment, he has to travel between various objects and then possess the objects to move even further. The goal is that every time someone dies, you can rewind time to 4 minutes before his or her death, and then try to create a Rube Goldberg-like contraption to avert the person's fate. There's not really a whole lot of detective work going on, but it's still so much fun to see how all of these objects come together to provide some of the most mesmerizing animation I've seen on the DS. And despite this being a port of a DS game, the animation still holds up really well. This was done by Shu Takami, who was the man behind the Ace Attorney series, and you can definitely tell it has that trademark style of turnabout writing where you think you know everything only for there to be another revelation to make you completely flip your thinking. The writing is oftentimes very over the top, but it helps the characters to really stand out quite a lot. Now, the reason why this is so low on the list is because it's a pretty low effort remake of the DS original. It has a couple of new art pieces, a sliding puzzle game that is so bad I couldn't even complete it on the easiest difficulty, a rearranged soundtrack, a chapter select, some achievements, but still not much else. The original Ghost Trick was not very replayable. It was a very linear game with only one ending, and you really had no reason to go back to it once you experienced everything. If you have the option to play it on the DS, I strongly recommend doing that. There's also an iPhone version that gives you the entire first chapter for free, but still, if you don't have any other way to play it, the Switch version is still really good, even if it's a pretty basic port and they couldn't even get it into widescreen or anything like that. However, what really makes Ghost Trick stand apart is its story. And I am about to talk about one of the coolest moments in the story in 3, 2, 1. Ghost Trick doesn't really have any bad moments in its storyline, but it does feel like it just keeps getting better as it goes along, so therefore the final 2 reveals are by far the best parts of the game in my opinion. First off, there's the revelation that Sissel is actually a cat, and the avatar that the game has been using the whole time is actually his former master. However, what is also really cool about that ending is how Missile plays a role in the story. Missile is actually the dog that you meet in Chapter 2, but in an alternate timeline, Sissel wasn't there to avert his fate. And so he watched his mistress die, but since he only had the power to swap objects, he needed to find someone who had more power. So he sought out Sissel and waited 10 years for the moment for when Sissel was supposed to avert Lynn's fate, but when he asked for Sissel's help, he said, "I need to find my own memories," and skedaddled. So then Missile went back in time and waited another 10 years, but this time he gave the caveat of saying, "Sissel, if you don't figure this mystery out by the end of the night, you're going to lose your memories." Yes, it was a lie, and I don't condone that type of lying, but at the same time, Missile waited 20 years to save his mistress in one timeline to affect that and also Sissel's timeline, and it made me think, is that how it felt for Jesus to be hanging on the cross? He went through so much effort just to save the entire world, and if Missile went through that much just to save one person, how much more effort did Jesus go through to save all of humankind?
Grant our wishes! Emblem of the 7 stars!
Super Mario RPG. This is a remake of Super Mario RPG Legend of the 7 Stars for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, which originally came out in 1996. It was a turn-based RPG, the very first Mario RPG, in fact, as evidenced by the title. However, to make it not as boring as other RPGs of its era, Square Enix did a couple of changes to make it more fun and also more faithful to the Mario spirit. For example, you could use action commands to make your attacks more effective, as well as decrease the damage you take from enemies. There were platforming sections on the world map to harken back to Mario originally being a platformer, and the humor was much more whimsical and lighthearted than a typical dark and world-ending RPG with a lot of visual humor and pantomiming. For this remake, they tried to stay as faithful as possible to the original game while updating it just enough to make it feel modern, but at the same time feel familiar to those who grew up with it. The graphics have been completely reworked to be in HD, with things like more textures, lack of the blue void surrounding everything in the original. The UI has been updated to make it much cleaner. The soundtrack has been completely remastered by the original composer, no less, and it sounds glorious. Yoko Shimomura managed to get a full orchestra for most of the tracks, and I cannot go back to listen to the Super Nintendo original. It was a good soundtrack, but this updated version makes it basically obsolete because she adds and enhances her original pieces by maybe adding extra sections or extra instruments, and it all sounds absolutely beautiful. In fact, I might even mistake it for a modern Mario RPG soundtrack. However, the reason why it's so low on the list is because I don't have a whole lot of nostalgia or love for the Super Nintendo era, and there were certain elements of it that still felt a bit outdated. For instance, the game is still in an isometric perspective and you can't change the camera, so certain platforming sections were much tougher than they probably should have been, especially because you don't have full analog movement despite having a control stick. There's also a section near the end that feels very dragged on and unnecessary. However, despite all of that, the battles are a lot of fun, especially when you get in the rhythm of it. I especially like how they added triple moves, where every combination in your party offers a fully animated new CG cutscene that has a devastating special attack or special power that you can get. So with fun visual humor, great graphics, spectacular music, and a pretty good battle system, it's still a really fun game even if it doesn't blow my mind. However, it's at least higher than Ghost Trick because it felt like this was an actual full-on remake as opposed to just a straight port with a few minor additions.
Protect us, emblem of brotherhood!
Life is Strange 2. Yes, I know it's been out on other platforms for eons, and it took its sweet time to come to Nintendo Switch with basically no improvements besides that the original game was an episodic release, and this one just contains all of the episodes in one complete package. This is a choose-your-own-adventure type of game, where you decide how you want to respond in conversations, as well as what you want to examine, and depending on your choices, it'll influence which ending you get, as well as the various paths through the different endings. This time around, your main character doesn't have any special powers. Instead, his little brother does, and it's your job as the older brother to make sure that Daniel uses his powers properly and doesn't abuse them. Daniel actually has a very advanced AI that can learn from what you teach him, and that can influence how he behaves in the future of the games, as sometimes he can choose to disobey your actions if you haven't taught him a certain way. This also affects what ending you get, as Daniel essentially has a mind of his own by the end. Chemistry between Sean and Daniel feels absolutely amazing and natural, especially with the wonderful voice acting on display. As much respect as I have for American actors that try to dub over Japanese language, there's something about when a game's dialogue is initially in English and it's by native English speakers where it feels more believable, like the pauses and the inflections feel much more like actual dialogue that you'd hear a person speak. I also really like the morality system in this game, as there are several choices where you can choose to do the wrong thing or the right thing, and most of the time I was able to enforce my Catholic values and say, no, this is something that I would discourage in real life, and most of the time the game would allow me to do that. So in my original review, I said that this was probably the most Catholic game I've ever played, and I still stand by that even after reviewing other games since then. You might be wondering why this game is so high on the list when I just had 2 remakes one after another, when this is literally just a port of an older game. Well, it's the fact that the overall gameplay and concept in Life is Strange 2 is just so darn good that I initially wanted to place it higher, but then as the year progressed, there were more and more amazing games that came out. However, what bumped it a little bit lower than the top 5 was because on Switch, it's a pretty hard sell if you have other ways of playing it. The game has really long loading screens. It had a couple of bugs when I played it. Hopefully they've patched it out, but still, that's not a great look, especially with how Life is Strange Remastered turned out. And it's digital only and takes up about 13 gigabytes on the Switch, which made it very hard to download other games, so it takes up a lot of space. However, if you have no other way to play this, then this is a great portable way to experience, in my opinion, the best Life is Strange game, and a great way to see how moral you can be, and also to be a Big Brother simulation just in case you're an only child and want to know what would it be like to raise someone. Going back to what I said about this being the most Catholic game I've ever reviewed, that's what we're going to discuss in the spoilers in 3, 2, 1. There's a scene pretty late in the game where Daniel gets involved in a Christian church that honestly seems more like a cult to me as someone who actually practices Christianity, and they seem to put Daniel over Jesus in their worship because his telekinesis seems to be a sign from an angel that's sent to save them. And so Sean realizes this hypocrisy and tries to convince Daniel that there's a such thing as a bad Christian and a good Christian. He uses the contrast of his own grandparents, as they are Christian, but they wouldn't do the things that Lisbeth and her parish would do, such as endangering a sick child, saying, "Oh, God will heal her because God heals everyone," when Jesus specifically said, those who are sick are in need of a physician. So it's nice to be able to really enforce Christianity in a Christian church, but the game also emphasizes that not all Christians are the good guys. Some of them take things a bit too far. Also, depending on your choices in this route, you can choose to spare Lisbeth's life, or she'll end up dying along with the church flames, which is a general theme throughout Life is Strange 2 in general, is that a lot of times people's lives will depend on your choices. I personally think I got the best ending on the first try, because not a single person whose life could be spared ended up dying. And I think that's just because I followed my conscience and thought, what does the church teach? And it paid off really nicely.
Liberate us! Emblem of rebellion!
Persona 5 Tactica. This is the second year in a row when I've had a Persona 5 game in the number 5 spot on the list. I swear it's just been a coincidence both times. This is a tactical RPG where you move your characters around the board freely, think of it like Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope, within a limited range, and then choose how you want to attack the enemies, either using a gun, a persona ability, or in Arena's case, art abilities, or just attacking them head on. Each option has their own strengths and weaknesses, and it's really fun to find the best way to exploit the enemies and get a one more by taking advantage of their weaknesses to create a really great flow state where you'll just attack again, then move to another character, get into position, ambush the enemies. And it's a lot of fun to really use the battlefield to your advantage, because you can get behind cover, climb up ladders. Later in the game, you can step on and off of switches to really switch up the elevation. And it's just more Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope, but in the Persona 5 universe. I know a lot of people are sick of Persona 5, but I'm personally really glad that we have more representation, especially because Persona 5 Royal took so long to come to the Nintendo Switch. I think the graphic style is really nice too. It strikes a fine balance between being too chibi, but also like not being too overly cartoonish, like say the Wind Waker was. Yes, I hold the unpopular opinion that I don't like Wind Waker's graphics. Unlike Fire Emblem Engage earlier in this video, this game actually has a really good story. It starts out kind of slow, but once it gets going, it feels very relatable, not necessarily in the events, but in the case of the character development. You meet a politician named Toshiro who gets most of the major limelight. I mean, he's billed as the second main character in the game's credits, and he has officially taken the spot as the character I relate to the most in all of fiction. He's a stickler for the rules, he likes to be there for people, but he's also not like overly touchy-feely about it, and he has a hidden inferiority complex that often goes unnoticed because he presents himself in a more official, gotta do what protocol teaches way. And even though I don't like the notion of rating a game higher just because you relate to it, I will admit that that is a very nice bonus. However, the reason why it's only number 5 on the list is because I feel like the endgame twist kind of dragged out the game way too much. Like, there was a part where I said, yes, this is a very fitting final battle. This is a great way to end the game. And then they said, no, 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 here's this major twist that we gotta pull. And then the game went on for like another 10 hours, and at that point I was really burnt out. But if you just like good tactical RPG gameplay with a good script, good voice acting, and a pretty good story, you're gonna love Persona 5 Tactica. Just make sure you've got a long time commitment to make sure that you have plenty of time to finish it.
Cut through to the truth. Emblem of the Master Detective.
Master Detective Archives Raincode. Due to a request on Spike Chunsoft's website, I have to disclose that there will be some spoilers for Chapter 0 throughout this video. However, as I said in my review, Chapter 0 is pretty standalone, and even if you know how that plays out, it shouldn't affect your overall enjoyment of the rest of the story. Master Detective Archives is the latest project from the team behind the Danganronpa games, and boy can you tell. From the music, to the main character's appearance, to the overall gameplay, it's very much a spiritual successor to that franchise, and in my opinion, it's even better. You switch between a third-person detective mode where you gather evidence, speak to suspects, yada yada, the usual detective stuff, and then you go into the Mystery Labyrinth to play a variety of mini-games meant to help you deduce how it was that the case played out, as well as determine who the culprit is. A lot of these minigames have very strong Danganronpa vibes, such as having a solution blade where you need to dodge the opponent's statements and then cut through the contradiction while also having the right key. So for example, just cutting it alone doesn't help. You have to have the correct evidence to properly make a counter-argument. Other minigames, such as going through the right tunnel in a minecart, jumping on the right platform before everything crumbles, it feels much more action-packed and engaging than a typical Danganronpa story. It also has absolutely wonderful voice acting. Lucian Dodge being cast as Yuma was really amazing. After most of the games I've played with him in, he's typically more of a sidekick type of character, so it's nice to see him take on more of a protagonistic role. The story is also really good too. It's not quite on the level of Zero Escape, but it is really nice when you get toward the end of the game and everything just melds together to present a very complete package where all the little details add up to make a really incredible finale. In case you weren't paying attention, this is actually the second game on this list that has the word detective in the title. Actually, Detective Pikachu Returns was in the running had not enough good games been released, so there possibly could have been 3 detective games. So you can really tell that I love inspecting, I love gathering information, I love rebutting against faulty logic. Supposedly that's like a big part of my personality type, but I've always just admired being able to solve mysteries ever since I was a kid, and this game, much more than Ghost Trick Phantom Detective, fills that need that I had in childhood and still kind of have to this day. I feel like if I were a bit smarter and didn't have certain things against me, I probably would have ended up being a detective. If you like Danganronpa, you're going to absolutely adore this game and want to get it without a second thought, especially as it refines that game's formula so much while also being its own standalone experience. It has a wonderful story, great voice acting, the graphics are actually surprisingly good. They're not terrific, but the way that Spike Chunsoft managed to program the rain and the lights reflecting off of the rain puzzles is a very pleasant experience, and since you're spending a lot of time in a rainy city, it's nice that it's easy on the eyes. Now, the reason why it's a little bit low, but like still pretty high, is because as much as I loved the story and the Mystery Labyrinth, there were also parts of it that felt like it was a bit unoptimized. There are lots of long loading screens. There are parts where you just walk down a straight hallway and just wait for the dialogue to exhaust itself. But at the same time, it's higher than other story-driven games on this list because it feels like it doesn't drag on too long. The story feels just right, and it's a good story at that. Probably the best story of any game on this list, to be honest, which is why it's so high. Hopefully this game doesn't go under everyone's radars, as it doesn't seem like enough people are talking about this, though can you really blame them with Spike Chunsoft's requests? And I hope that maybe this video will give this game more attention and you can say, hey, guess what? Another mystery game. Let's do it.
Danganronpa is amazing. This should be higher though. I am so offended how low this is.
I'm concerned for you.
Enchant us, emblem of wizardry.
Hogwarts Legacy. As most of you know, I absolutely adore Harry Potter, so there was absolutely no way I was going to miss out on reviewing this, especially after I heard that the developers delayed the Switch version just to make sure that it was well optimized. That'll be a theme going forward, by the way, so you can probably guess what games come after this. Hogwarts Legacy is a semi-open world action RPG adventure where you get to explore Hogwarts, Hogsmeade, the Forbidden Forest, and all of the surrounding locations around Hogwarts. It's essentially a Harry Potter fan's dream come true, as you get to see all of these iconic locations now fully realized. I never knew Hogwarts was such a beautiful and cozy place to be in, and it kind of makes me wish I could explore the place in real life. I love the combat. I feel like that was one of the most underutilized parts of the Harry Potter movies, and here it feels both fun but also like faithful to the source material at the same time. I actually would try to get into enemy encounters on purpose because I just loved fighting so much. Spells are used really nicely, and there's a cool auto-targeting system where the game automatically will put a targetable object within range and you just have to use the right spell on it, so you don't have to worry about awkwardly lining things up or worrying that the targeting system in the Zelda series doesn't work properly. I also love after you get a broom, you get to fly around all over the place. It sort of loses its luster a bit after the first time, but there are plenty of flying trials where you have to fly through the right rings, and that's where the broom controls really feel fantastic. So you've got amazing, utterly fantastic music. It doesn't even deserve to be in a video game, it's so good. It's got pretty gorgeous graphics too. I know a lot of people will say it's by far the worst looking version of the game, but it still looks absolutely amazing. Besides a few pixelated hair textures and grass here and there, it's honestly probably one of the best looking games I've played on the Switch, and that's saying a lot, especially with games like Mario Kart 8 Deluxe on there. So coupled with fantastic combat, amazing music, and gorgeous graphics, this game very nearly made its way onto number 2. But what ever so slightly pushed it back for me were the controls. I have a bit of a hard time getting used to the more traditional schemes that open world games have been using for a while, and I'm also used to games like Breath of the Wild, so it took me a bit of getting used to press in on the left stick to run, and sometimes I'd have to press it multiple times because the run animation didn't look too much different from the walk animation. Even by the end of the game, I was still pressing the wrong buttons because I just had such a muscle memory for certain other things that it didn't translate well into this game. Also, I know they tried their best, but they still couldn't optimize it perfectly, as there are still miniature loading symbols when you go through certain doors. There's a loading screen when you go in and out of Hogsmeade, in and out of shops in Hogsmeade, and it made it kind of dreadful to want to fast travel or shop as much as possible. But looking past those technical hiccups, I think the delay was well worth it. Developers that are actually given time and passion to make their projects are developers that should be given way more credit. So if the Game Awards won't recognize the amazingness of Hogwarts Legacy, then I will. Best Music of the Year, I don't think I'd nominate it for anything else, but definitely Best Music, and it should be deserving as one of the most amazing technical achievements to hit the Switch in recent memory. If you've already played this game, then you probably know exactly what my favorite part of this game is, once we get to the spoilers in 3, 2, 1. I actually really love Harry Potter trivia. I don't mean to brag, but I often dominate the competition whenever we talk about Harry Potter trivia. So it was really fun to be able to test my knowledge in the game, and even though this took place way before the Harry Potter books, it's nice to see some references here and there, such as stuff from the Fantastic Beasts and Quidditch Throughout the Ages books, as well as a neat little nod to the Deathly Hallows. As far as I know, if you're not the best at Harry Potter trivia, you're still able to progress through the game, you just won't get as good of rewards. And besides, the girl will tell you the correct answer anyway, so it's a nice way, even if you're not good at trivia, that you can just learn more about the wizarding world, and that's always fun.
Surprise us! Emblem of Wonder.
Super Mario Bros. Wonder. You see what happens when the developers are given no deadline to produce a prototype? It's called How You Make a Good Game. The industry should take lessons from this. Super Mario Bros. Wonder is yet another 2D side-scrolling Mario. However, it's the first brand new 2D side-scrolling Mario game in 11 years. And after all of that time, Nintendo managed to say, here is how we are going to innovate the series while still keeping it familiar enough. While the core gameplay is absolutely fantastic, the controls have been tightened up, there are a few quality of life improvements, the main gimmick is that every level has a gimmick. You pick up something called a Wonder Flower and the level will radically transform in so many cool ways I don't even want to spoil them, not even with a spoiler section, except for what you see on the screen, because obviously I have to show something. That would be super boring if it were just me talking. And I absolutely love the insane amount of creativity these levels bring. Super Mario Bros. Wonder also has a significance in the game even releasing at all, as it marks what I like to call the beginning of the return of Mario. For a while, those of us who were fans of Mario were really afraid that Nintendo was just going to keep playing it safe and stick us with a bunch of generic Toads and boring locations, and this, along with Super Mario RPG, the upcoming Paper Mario 2 remake, and hopefully much more thanks to the success of the Mario movie, this game was the starting point of realizing Nintendo is finally willing to unleash Mario at his full potential. And if this is just a start of what we're going to see, possibly even in, say, 3D Marios or Mario RPGs, then even if you don't like the game, the fact that its own existence is possibly going to make Mario be better in the future is reason enough to celebrate, reason enough to put it as number 2, and reason enough to possibly even splurge and spend the $60 on it. Unless you're me and are super poor, so I'm just gonna ask for it for Christmas. I love this game so much that I'm actually going to try to almost 100% it, and I'm not the completionist type, so that's one of the main reasons why it's so high up. That and it just having such fluid controls, great graphics, the characters are so very expressive, there's a lot of little details that add up, and it has a surprisingly competent multiplayer mode. Take away the fact that most of the soundtrack is very synthetic, there's still lives, and there are a few really cryptic find all the tokens levels. But when the game is focusing on sheer platforming joy, especially when the Wonder Flowers effect is in place, it's honestly one of the best, if not the best, 2D platformers I have ever played. And if anyone has a problem with Mario's new voice actor, here's what I have to say about his performance.
It's a perfect! Wahoo!
The Stanley Parable 2. Yes, you see, isn't this far superior to a measly port with a few minor additions? An entirely new experience, built from the ground up. This is what fans have truly been asking for. Calling it the Stanley Parable 2 is just so much catchier than Ultra Deluxe, don't you think? Ultra Deluxe? What does it even mean? But the Stanley Parable 2, now that's an artistic statement right there. It's future-oriented. It screams progress and innovation and long-term franchising potential.
Oh, no. No, I don't feel right about this at all. We both know you didn't put in any actual work for that win. Some people win fair and square, and this was not one of those situations.
I think I want to nominate this award to my Reformed Orthodox Rabbi Bill Clinton. Thank you, everybody.
Destroy the darkness. Emblem of the kingdom.
You all saw it coming. You knew it was going to be number 1 the moment you clicked on this video. If you didn't, you don't know me. You don't know anything about me. No, I'm just kidding. Tears of the Kingdom was destined to be my number one, probably since the moment it was announced, to be honest. Breath of the Wild was my favorite game of 2017, and at the time it came out, it also took the spot as my favorite game, finally overthrowing Professor Layton vs. Phoenix Wright. I loved the freedom of exploration, but especially the freedom of movement of exploration. Not only was it fun to walk around, but it was fun to get around the place in style, such as using the paraglider, shield surfing, climbing, and using the paraglider and shield surfing in wild succession, and being able to just completely break the game, to do things your way, and the game will reward you just as much as someone who did the intended solution. This may seem like a complaint, but I also like the resource management element of it. I know it can be cool to have unlimited stuff, but there's just something so cool about preparing for a situation and the intrinsic thrill of being able to do things because you came prepared and didn't just go in guns blazing is very satisfying. And that's why Breath of the Wild felt like a game that I could truly feel like it was the first game that I could really say it was immersive. Pretty much all of that still applies to Tears of the Kingdom, and that's not really a problem. I know a lot of people complained that the game reused the map, and therefore why should it be worth $70? I personally am in the camp of saying Zelda has done this before to great effect. We had Majora's Mask reusing assets from Ocarina of Time, and we had A Link Between Worlds reusing the world from A Link to the Past. You could argue those games possibly did it better, but I would disagree and say that more Breath of the Wild was something that I was really happy about. It's great to take all of those familiar mechanics, such as preparing for the weather, shield surfing, climbing, all that stuff that I praised before, and to be able to do it again, but completely recontextualized in this new version of Hyrule. Landscapes that are originally pretty boring have now been completely transformed, such as having an entire town just appear. There's new wells and caves, and just in case Hyrule hasn't been changed enough for you, there are now 3 different layers you can explore. There's the sky, the surface, and even the depths, which the depths is particularly amazing because it's like a full mirrored underground version of Hyrule. Literally everything has an equivalent in the surface. So like every light route has a shrine in the surface and vice versa. So you could like use them to plan out your completionist route in both surfaces, therefore making it easier to shrine hunt in the process. There are other little similarities as well, such as a coliseum in the surface being a coliseum in the depths, or a river on the surface becomes an impassable chasm in the depths. While the depths may not be the most fun to explore since it's so dark, it's also very fun to use your resources to find a way to get through the darkness as efficiently as possible. I also like the addition of the new gloom enemies that are absolutely terrifying. They actually take away your ability to refill hearts until you go into the light, and it managed to really fill that void in my heart that's abstract even by me talking, of wanting that terror that the moon inspired in Majora's Mask. And what's really cool about all 3 of these layers is that there's absolutely no loading screens between them. In fact, the only times you'll see a loading screen in the entire game are when you go in and out of a shrine and when you fast travel. That's it. This game was optimized so well that other developers are actually jealous of what Nintendo was able to accomplish. And that's not even talking about the new stuff that this game has to offer. Link's new hand gives him more special powers, which means that the powers in the old game are gone, but now these ones are even better, such as being able to grab nearly every object in the game and fuse them together to make this amalgamation of an amazing machine. You can do pretty much anything as long as you can imagine it. You can reverse time, you can fuse objects together. I didn't do this in my initial playthrough, but I totally regret it, because it's so much fun to have a mushroom sword, or a spring shield, or a rocket shield if you want to cheese those shrines. And it's cool that the game just lets you experiment so much and nothing you do breaks the game. There are no crashes, there are no crazy amounts of frame drops, there's no glitches. Nintendo took an entire extra year to make sure this game was polished and bug-free. and the delay was absolutely worth it. Now, is this $70 DLC? Not to me. I know some people might have wished that this might have pushed Zelda even further, like truly evolved off of Breath of the Wild. And while to a certain extent I can kind of agree with them, I feel like I'm okay with waiting until the next Zelda game so that they have even more time to refine the formula. Whereas for now, I'm content with traveling through this Hyrule again. It kind of felt nostalgic in a way, like returning home. If I were to be able to relive some of the best moments of my life, like for example, if my next mission trip I was able to go to the location where I had my first one, I would be ecstatic. And I'd love to re-explore the place and say, this is the exact spot where this amazing thing happened. And I loved doing that in Tears of the Kingdom to say, oh my gosh, that's the Great Plateau. I remember having all these cool memories. And so it felt like a great nostalgia overload. In addition to that, the production values are amazing. The graphics are pretty good, albeit I kind of wish it was more like realistic, like Twilight Princess tried to do, but it's still very nice for what it's trying to do. The music is utterly phenomenal. So glad it got nominated at the Game Awards for Best Music. I know most of it is ambient, but when it actually tries to have good music, it is utterly amazing. Plus it has Matt Mercer playing Ganondorf. How can you not be excited about that? In conclusion, Tears of the Kingdom is possibly not as good of a game as everyone wanted, but it was precisely the kind of game that I wanted. And so for me, the ability to retraverse Hyrule while having new dungeons, new bosses, new fun ways to get around the environment, as well as preserving pretty much everything that I loved about Breath of the Wild and getting rid of the stuff that I didn't, it's no wonder that this is my game of the year and currently my new favorite game. Breath of the Wild, stand back. It's time for Tears of the Kingdom to reign. Will there ever be a game to surpass it? Probably. That's why I never say the phrase favorite game of all time, because that implies all time, the entirety of time. So for now, enjoy it being my favorite game. And for those of you that don't want to see the spoilers, from here on out, everything is going to be spoilers. Let me just show you the ending that I had prepared for all of you. So for those of you stepping out, thank you so much for watching. Let me know down in the comments what your favorite games are. Special thanks to my patrons Matthew Rakowski, Spoon Ghost, and Splat Cat for their financial contributions. And until the next time, remember to keep the faith, stay epic, and God bless. Bye to those of you that don't like spoilers.
Now that's a happy ending. Or is it? Because everything's over now. And all that's left is you and the infinite void. Kind of makes you want to play saxophone, huh?
To everyone that stuck around to hear the spoilers, thank you so much, because I love being able to gush about Tears of the Kingdom's greatest moments. But before I do that, I have a special guest that is going to do her own perspectives and her own gushing. Please welcome into the video Splat Cat. Sadly, I wasn't able to get Misaki Todoroki for the third year in a row because she didn't have time to play the game and was having some difficulties with her technology. But Splat Cat has agreed to talk because she possibly loves Tears of the Kingdom even more than I do. She's certainly gotten more progress on it as far as the optional side quests go, so I did not tell her what to say. I just said, talk about Tears of the Kingdom and why you like it. And so without further ado, here's her thoughts.
Hi guys, my name's Kat. I'm a Twitch streamer and a Nintendo enthusiast. You may remember me from Paul's video about a year ago where his friends, including myself, showed off our favorite games released in 2022. Well, here we are again in 2023, and this time Paul and I are teaming up to show off the best game of 2023, Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Before we get started, I want to preface this by saying I don't know what Paul is putting in his video exactly, or what he's covering in his portion, so I'm going to talk about what my favorite things of the game are. And although we do love this game, we like different things about it, and we like the reasons why we like the game is slightly different. So, yeah. This is also your disclaimer that there's a lot of spoilers in this video, at least my portion. I don't know about Paul's, so do take note of that. And without further ado, this is my pick for the best game released in 2023. To start, I love Breath of the Wild. It's one of my favorite games. I love completing all the shrines, or the side quests, and the divine beasts, or the dungeons. In Tears of the Kingdom, there's just so much more of that. It's like exponentially more. I think they easily tripled the amount of content between Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. They added so many new shrines and quests and... Hold on a minute, I'm getting ahead of myself. There's not just so many extra shrines and side quests, but they've also like drastically increased the size of the map, which means you can go so many different places. Oops, wrong button. You can see that this is the normal map that you see in Breath of the Wild, but they also added the depths, which is the underworld. It's an exact mirror of the surface, which means there's just that much more places to roam and explore, and it's so much fun. There's so much to do in the depths, and it's scary, but it's really cool. They also added the Sky Islands, which, while much less numerous, are no small feat either, because some of them are really hard to get to. Like, where's one of them? Alright, down in the very corner of the map, only accessible by gliding over there. But yeah, so there's so much extra space, and they added 32 more shrines, and 32 more shrines live in the Sky Islands. There's 120 shrines on the ground, and 32 shrines up top, which means there are 152 shrines total. So I love the map. I really do. But I also love the side quests and the extra stuff that you can do in this game. So I said they easily tripled the amount of content. I was not joking. There are so many side quests. I don't know if you can see this. You can probably see it. Just there's so many. And this keeps going. There's so many small side quests. These are memories, they don't count. There are more memories in this game, but I'm not talking about that. There's so many side quests, and they're all so much fun. I just like doing random little things just for something to do. They don't give very much, like, they don't give very many, much reward, like maybe 20 to 50 rubies or equivalent, but I just like them because there's something to do. They're small and they're easily pick-upable. That was not a word, but you know what I mean. They don't take very much time. And I just like completing stuff. Like this. Small deliverables. Additionally, they also have side adventures, which are longer quests. They seem different than what you find in Breath of the Wild. But in Breath of the Wild, everything was called a side quest. In this game, the longer quests are called side adventures, which are just more quests, and they're so much fun, and there's still so many more of them. Like, I don't even want to count. There's just a lot. As you can see, there's a lot. Additionally, with quests, they did add more quests to go with the plot. I remember in Breath of the Wild there were maybe 5, or there was maybe 8. There was like 1 to complete the Great Plateau, 1 to get to Kakariko Village, and then 4 to complete, 1 for each of the Divine Beasts, and then go fight Ganon. In this, they added a lot more. They added a lot more different things to do related to the plot, which is super nice. I don't love the plot. It's not bad. It's not good. To me, it's just kind of neutral. I like doing the other stuff other than the plot, but I do like that they made the plot and the main stuff have more deliverables and easier to follow. Because I feel like the main stuff in Breath of the Wild was kind of vague. The last thing is the shrine quests. And if you might notice, many of them end with crystal. And that's because many of them are the same thing over and over and over again. Everything with crystal means you move a crystal from point A to point B. Point A being somewhere on the map, and point B being where the shrine actually sits. I do not like these. I'll be candid, I really don't like these. They're all boring. Most of them are in the sky. That's how you get most of these shrines. Not all of them, but many of them. But not all of them are that bad. But I'd say about 80% of them are just these crystal shrines that are not my favorite, because they're just the same. There's also like an amazing amount of content that you can do just outside of the plot that isn't related to anything. Like the Hyrule Compendium is bigger, like a lot bigger. And I've done a lot of it, clearly. I have close to 300 hours in this game. in about a month. Or no, I played it for 3 months before I took a break. But I have a lot done, and it took a long time. Like, yeah. There's also these things called Zenai devices, which you may have seen videos of people making things on the internet with these. Like, you can make some insane things with these. I never do these. This is not my particular thing, but I think it's really cool that they've opened up the door to making really cool things with them. Because you might see this ability is lets you move things, any kind of, mostly any object really, and stick them to each other. And that, in sticking these things all do a certain thing. Not all of them move per se, but they all have a function, and so you can make some really cool things with them. You can also cook, of course, and there's a whole recipe book that you can fill out. That's so much to do. My mother plays this game, and that's one of her things. So she wants to fill out the cookbook. The only thing I don't like about this is that there's much less space to store food that you make. Like, I think after this row there's maybe 2 more rows, if that, but there's not that many. There's a bazillion more materials in this game than there were in the last one, and you can make weapons with them. Like, all of the weapons that have an outline are weapons that I made on my own, and trying out different combinations of weapons, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't, is another thing you can do. Same with shields. I don't do that with my shields, but other people do. With bows and arrows, you can attach things to the tip to make them do different things, like add effects of ice, fire, and electric. You can also, the key eyeballs make them usually seek the eye of an opponent to get a direct hit. Wings make them go farther, and there's a lot more. And you can also just do more damage and stuff like that. And last, but definitely not least, there's just so much armor in this game. They added a lot, and a lot of it is upgradable, and getting all the stuff to upgrade it is super fun too. So that's a thing. You can still have horses in this game, and you can actually upgrade your horses, which is really fun. Because, I mean, yeah, it's expensive, but it's another thing if you're looking for just things to do. That's a good thing to do. I don't know, there's so much to cover. But I'll leave it at that, because I would never finish if I went in detail about everything you can do in Breath of the Wild. There's just so much. I'm not kidding when I say, like, they tripled the amount of content. They did so much. All of these light roots, those aren't there on you automatically. You have to go find all those. There's 120 of them. It's insane. I love this game. But I'll leave it at that. Thank you guys for watching. If Paul's part is already finished, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed my piece. If you don't already have Tears of the Kingdom, you should definitely get it. It's totally worth the whatever amount of money Nintendo wants for it. But yeah, I'm Splat Cat. You can find me on Twitch, twitch.tv/splatcat_. Thank you so much to Paul for letting me do my review on this. I know he knows how much I love it. No, he doesn't. I love this game more than I've ever shown before, but, you know, it's okay. Have a great day, everyone, and God bless.
I originally had 2 favorite moments I was going to talk about, but I overestimated how long this video was and decided to stick it to just one favorite moment for the sake of your sanity. I think the part that really made me love Tears of the Kingdom the most was the entire section with Doritos. The build-up was incredible, with the area suffering from a terrible blizzard which made Rito Village have this amazing icy rendition of its original theme, which itself is a remix of Dragon Roost Island from the Wind Waker. And then once you got Tulin, then you had to climb up through all of these areas in the sky to reach the top of a snowstorm, and then you jump into the thundercloud to get to the Stormwind Arc, which has such beautiful music. It starts out so haunting, but then it gradually gets more and more epic until you get to the battle against Colgera. Now, the battle isn't particularly challenging. However, its music and its atmosphere is where it really shines. Not only is this one of the first, if not the first, Zelda battle where you do it entirely in the air, but it also has one of the best boss themes in the entire Zelda series. Might even be my new favorite song in the entire Zelda series, but I'll probably have to go through Skyward Sword's soundtrack to sort that out in my head. For now, though, I want to focus on the best part of the song. I mean, all of the song's amazing, and yes, I'm stalling to make sure you can hear more of it. But what especially is amazing is once you get to the final phase of the battle, then the choir plays an epic rendition of Dragon Roost's Island theme from the Wind Waker. Which is not only a nice callback to Rito Village's theme, but also to the Mulgara fight in The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker. Not the biggest fan of The Wind Waker by any means, but it is still a nice callback to arguably the best tune in that game. So with that, thank you very much for watching. I am so glad you guys took the time to give my passion project a watch. This has been in the works for longer than you can imagine, and I really wanted to make sure that you guys had an incredible time. Hopefully the 2024 one will turn out even better than this, although don't pressure me, I can only do so much. I'm only human. So again, thank you to Matt for composing a custom music track. Thank you to Kat for her thoughts and her footage on Tears of the Kingdom. Thank you to Esabelle for her acting and her editing and her transitions. Thank you to Matthew Rakowski, Sploon Ghost, and Splat Cat for being patrons. Thank you to everyone who gave me suggestions after the last video on how to make this better. Thank you to those who are going to watch this and comment and tell me how I did. And until the next time, remember to keep the faith, stay epic, God bless. You already saw the Lumily part, so just imagine it appearing again. Bye!
The birds are singing. Isn't it beautiful? Golly, as it is written, you, Link, are the hero of Corridai.
I guess that's worth a kiss, huh? Ha! I won!